All that brilliance will be lost to history. Sorry.
Thank you.
Uh,
I appreciate it.
Sorry? Thank
Thank
you
you.
for
I
that
appreciate
interruption. All right, we're talking about, just to get the tape back up to speed, we're talking about what some of this material is about, where it comes from, and what the biases of the people preparing it might be. Uh, so that's part of what, as we look at psychology and behavioral psychology and behavioral finance, these experiments don't come out of nowhere. They come out of academic work and some theories that people are developing or theories they'd like to confirm. So, they bring, what's the name of the scientist that uh, begins with not Heimlich. At any rate, there's a German scientist who conceived that every experiment has to include the experimenter and how the experimenter impacts the results. And that's the same thing with this material, is that we're bringing the confirmation bias may be present with the people searching for confirmation bias. It's an irony, but it's something that we need to understand. Heisenberg, thank you. Appreciate that. Um, as we go through this material, I need to ask you a question. I've got some notes that I flipped to in a Word document. When I flip to it, do I take my picture out? I'm going to do it right now. You continue to hear me and see me? Sorry?
Yes. Yes.
Can you see me when I flip?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So, part of what I'd like you to grasp out of this material is I take a critical approach to how it's conceived and where it comes from. And how do you bring this out to people? Well, part of it is it true? That's part of what we need to bring, and parts of it are to communicate to people that they're bringing their own personalities and shortcomings and their brains, which are not wired up for perfect recording, but rather face some of these issues that are in the material for today. Tweed, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, for me, it's sometimes when I deal with a real client situation, and I really believe in the protection need. I really believe that the client needs to buy some life insurance.
Right?
However, I really don't want to overspending it because most of the people who work with me is kind of older people, like over 45 to 50 years old, or even older than that, and they have
Older
no
than
life
that?
insurance. Yeah. So if you try to make them buy enough insurance, it will
Yeah,
eat in on the cash flow that they have, and I really don't believe in it.
right. But that's you understanding what product is available.
Yes. Well, if I look at the asset and I analyze everything, and if enough money for them, in case of one passing away, and then I just recommend very little of the insurance, if anything. I believe in long-term care even more than life insurance.
Right. So, but how do you get past objections is one of the questions that was posed by another classmate, and I suspect you have something to share on that score as we get there.
Oh, for me, I do the analysis on the NAVA plan, and then I will show them the graph. I will show them exactly what if one passed away, if what happened to the one that still survive, and then I come up with a number, not by me, but by the number, by the plan, and then I
Right.
let the client decide. And most of the time, if they see that, and then they commit it to that, if the cash flow allows them to do it.
And they trust you.
Yes, I think the trust is a big thing because when they trust you, that means you don't sell them anything. You just advise on the best interest of your client.
Nicely put. Nicely put. I've enjoyed your comments, by the way. Thank you. So, let's go through some of the issues that we're facing here, and for example, perception. What is being communicated about perception? I think, Tom, it's your turn.
Well, I think that what's being communicated is oftentimes people's perception is not accurate based upon all the heuristics, recency bias, and that type of thing. That, for me anyway, it's easier when I put all that stuff on paper and show it to them. Even though oftentimes, like the insurance subject, they don't, it's so far away that it doesn't impact them. They feel immortal, and they believe they really don't need insurance.
Who are you working with? We said she was working with older people.
A lot with retired people. I had some clients in my office today and was dealing with the recency bias. The market's been so bad for 10 years, why should I risk my money in stocks?
Which bias is that again?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I had to show them, well, it's tough to answer that question right now. But I believe everything goes back to the mean. And I don't know how it'll happen, but it'll be something we never expected. Like if Europe really falls apart, all the money in the world will come to the United States. I don't know that that'll happen, but it's just very hard to predict things.
Well, that gets into the nature of money issue, which this material touches upon but doesn't really address, and I probably want to save that for another class. What is money is a question to be asked at some point around here. It's a pretty interesting question.
But I think what this talked about is perception. Is oftentimes our intuition overrules reality or hard facts when we lay them out that way. It's better for me to have everything written down. I'm learning for myself as well as my clients. And not estimations.
How long have you been doing it?
22nd year.
So you're still learning after 22 years? That's great.
That's why I took this class, because I've learned that we are our own worst enemy sometimes.
Chad, you have something to say?
Yeah, I did actually. I kind of had a question for both Twee and I guess Tom. Do they find that working with their clients come in with that preconceived notion that there's a certain product that they need to have, especially at a certain age? I know my mother, I just had a conversation with her. She's 55, and she's absolutely convinced that she needs more term life insurance. And I asked her, why? I thought it was kind of ironic that it was in conjunction with this class. I said, why do you feel like you need more term life insurance? And it's her perception that, well, if something happens to her, that would be her way of leaving something to me and the grandkids. And I said, Mom, the idea of term life insurance is to take care of those that you've left behind. I'm kind of
You can speak directly to them. Pretend you're in a class and you're looking at them. Twee and Tom, you've been asked a question.
I would agree that people have preconceived notions based upon advertising. news articles, finance shows that oftentimes don't deal directly with the needs of an individual client.
What's the role of an advisor in that
And
circumstance?
I guess then Tom,
Education.
do you find that certain age groups of clientele see things in a way like, oh,
I think quite a bit of it actually, because nobody has sat down. You know, when you're talking to your neighbor's talking about what's good for them. When you're listening to advertising on TV, it's telling you what's good for the advertiser. And I have found it very important to take each individual client and their needs and evaluate those, and then educate them and make it clear to them that this is specifically for them. But yeah, I find people bias tremendously.
Yeah, I
Colin, you
just
got
wanted
your hand
to.
up?
Biased.
Yeah, I
Colin,
wanted
you got your
to
hand up?
comment that I'm not in the industry today, but I'm in the kind of internet ISP industry, and we actually see this all the time. Clients come in looking for whatever is kind of the I don't know, we call it, flavor of the month or what have you. Whatever is in all the kind of CIO and IT journals is suddenly what everyone needs to have. In our industry, it's a little different. We're talking today about, it was MPLS, which is a type of connectivity that they would use to connect multiple offices and guarantee a quality of service, because that's what was written about in all the journals. Now today it's the cloud. You have to have cloud services. You see commercials on TV, the cloud, and it's kind of this recency and salience type of thing. Whatever is out there and everyone's talking about, the latest buzzwords is what everyone must have, and they come in asking for it. And I'm thinking it's probably very similar with financial planning in that, you've got whatever Susie Orman or Jim Cramer or whoever is talking about on CNBC, MSNBC, CNN, that these are the things that everyone's going to be coming in and saying, I need this, even though they're not really necessarily qualified to make that decision.
They're by necessity probably not qualified to make that decision. I mean, I think that's part of what you need to recognize is that people don't know much. And this is complex. To mix all these things together takes a lot of knowledge. I believe, to the tips of my toes, that financial planning requires a greater depth and breadth of knowledge than almost any other undertaking. That we have to know more about more than almost anybody else, which speaks to being humble in what you do know, because you can't know it all.
Yeah, not only that, sorry, it's
We've
kind of
got a
continuing
hand
along
up
the
from
same
Colin.
thought. Not only can you not know it all, you also can't do it all, and you need to be able to, it's what we typically refer to as being kind of the honest broker of information and advice. And, in our industry, we are working on a commission. I am not straight commission. I'm kind of an indirect commission because I help people out with the technical side. But when people come in and they say, hey, I need this, I need X, or I need
Right.
Y, it's best to look at their needs, look at what they really do need, show them, as Twee was saying, kind of the different paths and what will happen in each case. And even if it's something you end up not being able to do, maybe their best bet is to go with someone who offers one of those services that isn't what you offer. But you want to be the honest arbiter, I guess, so to speak, and give them that advice. And not only simply for ethical reasons, but also it actually benefits you long run, because they remember this and they're going to come back to you in the future for advice. And eventually, there's going to be something that, obviously, whether they're actually doing a full financial plan or it is something, if you're selling, that you're selling to someone, that there's going to be a piece in there for you at some point.
Well, I think the issue is one of collaboration, and collaboration has become a fairly big buzzword. And I will tell you that in my generation, it's not often done. That my generation is an eat what you kill generation, for the most part. That's the lovely term that we've used to describe it. But lawyers do it, and financial planners do it. Eat what you kill and don't share a whole lot. And I think what you're describing is a collaboration model, which is starting to gain some traction. Sam, you had your hand up. Dr. Basu?
I think he's clapping.
Yeah, I'm here. I was just giving you applause on that. Eat what you kill. Thank you for that.
Well, it's kind of gross, isn't it? I think it's kind of, I'm not, if you can be in a collaborative model, we were able, when we
Right
came
now,
in.
I'm actually looking at that to support the way the boomers have actually done it through numbers. And I'd be happy to share with you guys in the future on that. But I had my hand up for a different issue.
Okay.
I can see also another dimension here, tying in to earlier what from I think Tom or Colin was talking about this, about recency and keeping up with the Joneses, having to your center of influence. Who do you listen to? Staying on that task, this issue comes up about spending versus saving issue, because it becomes all about spending now, and from that point of view, the consumption part of it today is just staggering. It's just been sort of like, where I see it adding is this, I'll give you an example. Like, let's look at what's primetime TV, right? Primetime TV is not prime time for the prime shows. Primetime TV is as follows. Mom and dad both come back from long days at work, picking up kids from sporting events and stuff. They get them back home, and they feed them, have them showered, feed them, put them to bed, and then at the end of the day, prime time, they sit back in front of the TV, so all their defenses are down. And now you get all these messages coming to you, so some subtle, some not so, about this beautiful self you taking vacations with, drinks with umbrellas on them, inside them, and stuff like that. And the first thing you want to do next morning is, how do I get that money to, treat myself? Because, this is what I've heard people are doing and stuff like that. Hey, you're making 3%, I'll show you how to make 10%, 12%. Stuff like that. And these messages, these consumer behavior researchers, the marketing guys, they know what are the triggers inside us, who initiates the buy decision and stuff like that in the house. Is it a kid? So get into Barney shows or something, wherever it comes from, where the parents can't resist and so on. And so we are getting bombarded by media constantly to buy, because then you're a beautiful guy, or a beautiful gal. And how do we fight this compunction? Because, as a boomer, you won't believe, we increased our consumption in nominal terms, in real terms, real dollars. We increased our consumption from 1985 through 2010, 3% every year in real terms, with inflation that's 6% a year. That's close to China's real GDP growth rate over the same time period, because we buy all their goods.
Wow.
And in 2006, for the first time, savings went negative. As a nation, we lived outside our limits as a nation. And that's really also hurting us here, the debt crisis and stuff. But that's a segue to the behavior, because the spending saving decision is also hugely macro for us as a country, as citizens of this nation. And we need to all be in it, whether it's through Occupy Wall Street or it's through these classrooms. There is a
Well, this is where I get into my thesis that we have virtually ignored the individual in the development of economic theory. And this business of behavioral economics is as close as we've gotten to dealing with the individual. But I think you can see from all these experiments, there's nothing individual about these. These two are done on a macro basis. Although it helps us understand individuals, it's not individual in its implications. That's our work. That's what we do, is help people understand what's going on in their brains and what's going on in their buying decisions, and that what they do does in fact have implications for the nation and for the world, that it's not just about them. Some time ago, about 20 years ago, I conceived of the 3 rules of financial planning. I'm a little bit famous for it. I still think it's pretty good advice. Save more, spend less, don't do anything stupid, as a fundamental. And as we work with individuals, helping them look at what it takes to save money over time is part of the job. There's all these products, but there's still the how much are you saving? How much are you deferring for a future that will require you to have resources? Chad?
Yeah, I
Chad?
guess my question is, so getting back to the TV, I'd like to add one comment and then a question. As we live over here overseas, we receive all of our TV programming via Armed Forces Network, which is basically all of the broadcast stations provide free programming to troops and families that live overseas. They do so with zero advertising. That's the understanding, that there's no commercials. And I have to tell you, the 1 year my family lived back in the United States, my kids were bombarded with commercials on TV, and their whining, their needs multiplied. I mean, exponentially just went through the roof, and it was absolutely due to this fire hose effect of the commercials that they saw on TV. So I guess that leads to my question: is it the commercialism that's leading to this overconsumptive behavior, or is it the actual programming that's changing the way we see things, that's what we need? Because I guess my question is, I've never had Nickelodeon. I didn't see what was on TV 40 years ago, 30 years ago. If what was being programmed, put out 30 years ago was pretty
Yeah, I think so. Happy Days, they lived pretty well. I'm thinking of Richie Cunningham, and you've probably seen the reruns, but I think I don't think it was quite as overt, but it certainly was there. I've heard this argument and this complaint for a pretty long time, that it was the commercials were generating this negative consumptive behavior, and I don't know how to combat it except uh, talking about it. And I'm no more of an expert than you are in terms of observing what's going on in society. I really appreciate your commenting about your kids. I think that's rather extraordinary, that their behavior changed in that short a time.
I think today people are.
We live in a little microcosm. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately for us, we just we're not exposed to the same typical consumption behavior that the average American is living over here. We don't see it the same.
Well, again, when we're advising clients, part of what we need to know is what are the circumstances. One of the first things you go through with a client is what are you spending, and they'll put out a number, and then the next question is why are you spending it? And frankly, a lot of financial planners take a mulligan on that one, that they don't really get into the why are you spending what you're spending issues, and how do you really want to control your financial life. A lot of financial planners will just take it at face value and not go further. And I think it's one of the most important jobs that a financial planner has. But I will tell you that I hate that. I hate getting into somebody's budget. It feels really intrusive, and it violates their privacy. But if you don't do it, and so one of the things that's emerging, frankly, are specialists who deal with cash management. And my daughter's one of them. It's pretty interesting to watch her function in this world and in an area that I truly don't like very much. So, anybody got a hand up? So where are we? As you read this material, did the question, what is this all about, emerge to you? Why am I learning this? Chad?
Yeah, I guess like I mentioned before, I took a lot of this on face value. I'll be honest, the one piece of information that was posted that I really kind of went, okay, now what do I do with this, was the, and I don't have it here in front of me, was the National Plan for Financial Literacy. I thought that was really, really interesting.
Well, I'll tell you one thing is that financial education works to inform people about what the issues are. It does not help them make decisions. People do not make decisions based on what they know. That's another process entirely. That's this whole issue of structuring retirement plans so it's easy for people to opt in. The nudge concept that has been written about. That stuff's real important. It's people don't make quality decisions for themselves without advice. There's too much, and they get scared, and they get what's that one category, over information.
Information overload.
Too much information was one of the categories that we studied in this chapter. And thank you, information overload, and people suffer from information overload, and what happens when they're overloaded? Right. Yeah, they were okay yesterday without this stuff. Why won't they be okay tomorrow? It's real. And think about your own reactions to some of this. One of the things that's true is that even with the education that financial planners get for themselves, their care for their own affairs is not necessarily something they'd want to flash across the internet. The financial planners don't necessarily make good decisions for themselves. They don't make the decisions that they would make for their clients. It's sort of stunning. Not to say everybody's a.
Unfortunately, I agree.
So, I guess part of what I'm thinking about this material is that we need to know what these issues are, but we have to take them with a grain of salt. I guess when I read the overconfidence chapter, I'm going, and why do I care about this? And what good would this be to me in a client situation? And I'm not coming up with an answer. I think that I'm glad to know that it's an issue. I'm glad to know about it. I'm glad to have the education. But, is this particularly helpful? My clients aren't overconfident. Say,
Well, I think it's natural human behavior to have.
say more, please. Was that you?
I think, my clients, myself, I think of a lot of us are overconfident. This is Tom.
What do you mean
Am I the
by
only
that?
one speaking?
What's that tell you? What's that tell me? Are you really overconfident?
Not anymore. I would say that, my experience. Well, my experience in this business, if you go back to, the end of the century, and the stock market's going up 25%, 34% a year, we begin to worship money, and I think we did that with a few bumps in the road until 2008. And
Pretty good bump in
all
2000.
the inputs from the television. Pardon me?
There's a pretty good bump in 2000.
Yeah. And then 2008 happened, and I think that we, as a nation, are changing our behavior towards money. I mean, the savings rate went down, but it's back up today. I don't believe it's high enough today, but it has gone back up. We are slowly working our way, I believe, out of this, on the individual side, slowly working our way out of this morass of debt. Unfortunately, the government has just made up for it.
Yeah, I like the idea of squeezing some of these foreclosures and getting them, to a point of not being an issue anymore. I wish more work had been done on that. You're letting the guys have all the fun.
Well, as I thinking that some people that they do not make a good decision, and so you as a financial planner, you have to educate them, and sometimes they don't even take your advice, even they pay for it. So that is a kind of frustration sometimes I go through. I don't know how about Tom, if you experiences anything like that. Because for my client, I charge them the fee first for financial planning, and after that we're going to implement based on their plan.
Right.
And sometimes they just pay me a couple $1,000s for their plan and not.
Well, we're dealing in a subject that remains a 21st century taboo, and people. I think it's helpful, and I'm going to keep bringing up this "what is money" issue. But money has changed considerably since World War II, and the rules for dealing with money have changed substantially since World War II. Part of my own stump speech is that money is the most powerful and pervasive secular force on the planet. Money skills are 21st century survival skills. They're survival skills that don't come naturally to human beings. And that's where these conversations with learned people, financial planners, people who've gone through courses like this, people who can take an objective view of money, can share their perspectives and help them make good decisions. But just because we have that knowledge doesn't mean they're going to make good decisions. That actually requires sales skills. Even if you're not selling product, it still requires selling the concept of this is good for you. And that sometimes puts you in a position of authority that you don't really want over another person. So it's very strange stuff, this money. Does that make sense? Chad?
Yeah, I guess, so you're saying we almost have to, and forgive the word, but almost preach the gospel of money, if you will. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
I think we do. I think that society right now is based on money, you know, and we can complain about it. I think Dr. Basu pointed out that there's some real negatives in that money worship function, but by the same token, we're in a society that requires us to literally plan on living 20 to 30 years on unearned income. Even people that want to work to the end of their lives can't be assured that they'll be able to. So this business of saving for later in life issues is no joke. And it's one that even the insurance companies and so forth bring out their canoes and paddle into the sunset as if it's a no problem life. I personally wish they would show people on tubes in hospitals spending the last 6 months of their lives in misery and half their net worth. I think that would be more honest, but you know, that's me. Colin.
Yeah, I wanted to go back, not to derail the current direction of the discussion, but to the chapter 6, overconfidence. I completely agreed with you while I was reading the chapter, kind of like, okay, well, where would this come in
Thank
with
you.
the client? But in this discussion tonight, I realized that maybe it doesn't come in necessarily so much with the client as we need to look at ourselves and realize that we may be over this sort of thing and kind of look at it and try to look at it in regards to ourselves and our relationship and then what we're advising the client rather than maybe what the client's doing. Maybe it's more of what we're doing and how that impacts the client or our attitude towards ourselves and what we're doing.
I think that's really well put, and thanks for sharing that. I think that the cockiness that we can muster. I remember when we first got into the money management business, which is different than selling mutual funds in a whole lot of ways, but I remember promising to myself that if I ever thought that I was really a qualified money manager, that's the time I needed to stop. That I didn't have the education of a CFA, or you know, that we were really hiring experts to do the money management. It wasn't us doing the money management. Does that make sense? Looking for confirmation here. At any rate, I think overconfidence is a real problem when it comes to anything involving money, and particularly managing money. It's very difficult. Chad, you have your hand up?
Yeah, if I may, I guess I saw the overconfidence as really one of the biggest things, as opposed to downplaying it. I read that I can't remember which article it came from, but I read the study where the Department of Defense had offered basically severance packages to a bunch of members back in the early to mid 90s, and they
Right.
anticipated 100% of the officers were going to take the annuity, and a certain fraction of the enlisted were going to take the lump sum.
Right.
And in turn, what happened was that the officers, which I believe was clearly out of overconfidence, took the lump sum, and the majority of the enlisted took the annuity out of probably lack.
You know, I think, thank you for making that tie. I had the same conclusion when I read that part of the paper, and It was a stunning difference in net present value, as I recall. All right. It's hard to let somebody have all your money. You know, it's when somebody puts a whole chunk of it in front of you, it's mighty tasty. And I think that overconfidence issue there is that I can manage that money and I will make it do magic and not understand what you just gave up. Tom, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just going along with what you're discussing. I really enjoyed the paper on annuities and retirement as well. And it was an eye-opener for me. You know, when I started in this business, I was a stock and bond buyer. You know, and I became a CFP 3 years ago, and I'm much more of a planner today. And, you know, in my office, we always poo-pooed annuities and insurance, quite frankly. That article really opened my eyes to the benefits of annuities, and it's something I'm actually seriously considering talking to more people about. You know, those examples were pretty dramatic as far as satisfied retired people go.
I thought that was
It was
impressive.
very impressive.
I thought that was very impressive.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
spent about an hour today with a professor from Texas Tech who's involved doing. He teaches behavioral finance as well, but they're doing some research on annuities and different kinds of annuities, and there may be an explosion. You know, computers enable a lot of interesting things to happen, and they can help us develop products that are really age specific. And he was talking about that, longevity risk and products that can really help people deal with longevity risk at fairly low prices because an awful lot of people aren't going to make it. You know, if you're buying insurance that kicks in at age 85 or annuities that kick in at age 85, you can have a pretty good annual income and still not have it be worth a whole lot in terms of net present value. Does that make you guys
You
understand?
know, I also think.
You all
Pardon
understand
me?
how insurance and
Yes.
annuities are put together?
Yes, I do. I understand the insurance component. I think something like that would be great. Good tools.
Well, they're working
You know,
on
the
it.
other thing, yeah, I think that's great. The only other point I'll make is that, you know, when you take a lump sum, I think you have the illusion of being rich. And I think it's easy in the early years to spend more money because you've got this big pile of money, and
Exactly.
then you wake up one day and it's gone.
Well, the statistics on lottery winners, for the most
Right,
part,
exactly. Yeah,
and lawyers assume that big personal injury settlements will be spent in 5 years,
yeah. That's
which is really sad when you
agreed.
think about how personal injury awards are calculated. It's supposed to help
Yeah.
people in their later years deal with things like 24-hour care. And if you spend it, it's not there for that purpose. Too bad.
Right.
But a lot of those settlements in the personal injury cases end up with annuitized products that do last a lifetime, based on some percentage of interest, and the actuaries putting together one-ofs for these personal injury situations. You can do an awful lot with a couple $1 million if you have people structuring how it's distributed. And the companies like it because they get to keep the money in the meantime.
Right. Yeah.
I won't say it's a win-win exactly. I've never quite figured out. Seems like there's a P under the mattress there someplace. Those are fairly vibrant industries, and personal injury settlements have been a vibrant business for a long time. Tom, you've had your
I have a
hand up.
client who received.
Sorry?
Well, yeah, I was just to say I have a client who received a large personal injury settlement. It also has an annuity that pays her $75,000 a year.
Right.
But in 1 year since she's been my client, she spent $600,000. You know,
Deep breath, Dick. Okay.
buying things for other people. Well, you know, and it's just this is an eye-opening industry.
Can I suggest you take a look at the Sudden Money Institute?
The Sudden Money Institute.
Yep.
I will do that. I will do that.
My very good friend Susan Bradley wrote the book Sudden Money about 11 years ago, and then started the Sudden Money Institute, and has been developing it for the last 10, 11 years. It's something, and even just going to the web page is an education. You're welcome. Tom. Tom? Your hand's still up, but I haven't gotten to the point where I'm recognizing everybody's voices, so I apologize. Colin?
Yeah, I was actually going to say something actually about what Psalm just posted in the chat. And Twee actually alluded to it, and I believe it was Tom maybe earlier. A lot of us, again, I'm not in the industry, but I've followed, a lot of different planners on TV, read a lot of books, etc. Not necessarily the journals, but more like what a consumer might read and, purchase and read. And all the advice out there.
Is he Orman fan?
To some degree on certain things. Yeah, but anyway, what they all say across the board is that annuities are tremendously expensive and the commissions are huge, and that they're typically, basically they're steering people away from them.
Right.
And in reading this information, what I've learned, especially the Annuities and Retirement Well-Being and then the Pension Design and Structure papers, that while they can be structured that way, of course, and they can be risky, as someone was just saying, variable annuity, of course, your returns will be varied, but it's good to have kind of a solid base out there so that you're guaranteed at least a base, kind of a minimal existence, survival level, or if you've got the money, and want the extra peace of mind, to bring it up to your current standard of living, or 80% of that, or whatever the level is you feel is appropriate. And actually, based on our last class discussion and some of the chats, I actually went online and was looking around actually personally for myself, and I ran across this site. I have no affiliation or anything, don't really know anything about them, but it was a handy site. I think it was newretirement.com. They have a handy calculator on there where you can actually predict. Basically, you can say, I've got this much to put into an annuity, and they'll tell you what, kind of what it will generate based on your retirement age, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
And I just thought that was a handy thing to look at from a personal perspective, as far as getting kind of at least a base level and a guarantee for that peace of mind.
Well, feel free to share those websites with us. I think other people might enjoy taking a look at those as well. And I don't know if everybody's following the chat, but there's a lot of good thought coming out, and there's a vibrant conversation taking place over there. So I appreciate. And I like the notion of creating. Sam, could you say more about creating your own annuities? I don't know if Sam's on. Okay.
I need to unmute my microphone. Oh, okay.
You're on.
Creating your own annuities is pretty straightforward. It's done like most of these, securitized obligations like CMOs, collateralized mortgage obligations and stuff like that. You got to sort of find some good securities like Ginnie Mae's and stuff with some interest rates, and you strip the IOs from them and create annuity cash flow streams. However, those are cheap. Those are really cheap and can be done quite straightforward. However, in the fixed annuity business, though some of those products are expensive because they're promising you a lot more. Right now, some of them are offering a 4% floor with participation on the upside. Where will you get something like that right now? I mean, look at how much more than $1 trillion went into treasury notes in August and September on close to 2%. People are willing to lock in 2%, 10 year for 10 years, $1 trillion at 2%. That's a statement that something is going wrong. These people are scared out of their minds, which is why that fixed annuity like assurance becomes such an important thing for us, that we have some assurance that we can cover our basic needs, like emergency fund kind of stuff. If you didn't have a job, what would you spend that money for? We need to have that continuously, and it's being threatened right now, right, with the jobs and all that. So the macro issues are also battering us, and as you pointed out, Dick, no one's looking at that, in a social behavioral manner. I won't say no one because I am, and you are too.
Right.
And I'm writing about it too.
Well, you're writing.
The social effects of collective individual behavior, like herd behavior, return chasing behavior, it's destructive for us as a nation. And it's newsletters and blogs. It's like, bubbles and crashes. People are just rushing from one, El Dorado to another, looking for that, elusive returns. And it's mindless. And it's, is this rational? Obviously not. So from a planner's point of view, this is what you deal with every day. I mean, theoretically, it's so much easier to sit here and chat about this stuff. Face to face, you've got to, be able to identify these traits and qualities and be able to counsel them and educate them. And if they need counseling, to be able to refer them to a counselor. Gambling behavior, speculative behavior and gambling behaviors close. Other kinds of destructive behavior where a counselor is needed. And I think, Dick, you told me about this, that there are many practices today which include counselors.
Right.
And it's like a team approach, right?
But there are not enough, psychologists on the whole are pretty afraid of money. It remains, it's a taboo. It's like sex was 100 years ago. And literally, it's venturing into a territory where they're scared.
But they are coming in.
They're coming in.
They are starting with Kaufman.
Tom, you're coming in and out. Your mic isn't quite working. But
it's working. I don't want to interrupt.
Well, I welcome your interruptions because you say intelligent things when you do. So I appreciate it. But there are some people, Ted Klontz, for example, Ted and Brad Klontz are doing some phenomenal work. But I think it's wise as we look at some of these behavioral. I guess I think that some of what we're reading in the book here is sort of behavioral finance light. I've been in a room where people were going deep into their money issues, and the intensity was beyond my experience. I literally couldn't take it after a couple days. I had to leave. But people looking at their anger over money issues, and so when we talk about what's good for them, that's one thing. But people have deep-seated feelings about money. And I've seen people cry. You go through the 7 stages of money maturity, and people talk about I'm breaking up? Shit. How's that? Tell me when I get okay. Colin? You tell me if I'm okay?
Now you are. Yeah, you were skipping around. I mean, it was like a bad cell call there for a bit, and then all of a sudden it just came in clear as day.
Great. Well, Somnath was doing the same thing on my computer, and he got okay. Did that happen with him? With you? I think it may be the system.
It did not for me, no. Just yours was skipping.
Okay. Interesting. Technology. Can't live with it, can't live without it, right?
It's going around.
All right. I was talking about an experience I had at a place called Onsite that goes deep into people's psychology of money. And I've never experienced anything like it, the intensity of emotions that an overspender had, that somebody had around their kids and how to support them, that somebody had with what Rick Taylor calls financial infidelity. This stuff is powerful, very, very powerful. And if you're coming in, or you're still here, I mean, if you're working with individuals and their money, it's something that is unlike any other experience. It's more intimate than anything else. Money's as intimate as it gets. Chad? Chad?
Okay, so I guess my question then, yeah, I'm here. My question is then, I'm assuming they have, but have these money concerns, the deep-rooted psychological aspects of them, have they existed for the last 50, 100 years? Or are we now in a situation where now they're a problem? I guess my question being, how did, through the 40s, 50s, 60s, how was everything so normal and now they seem so chaotic? What changed between then and now that has...
Well, I was a kid in the 50s, and it was a good time to be a kid. I know that. But I think money has changed dramatically, and it's part of the Industrial Revolution. The money is the lifeblood has become the lifeblood of the body social. And sorry, become the lifeblood of the body social, and boy, I mean, this is a book. This isn't just a couple minutes worth of conversation, and But I'll point out the fact that the Bible is the second most addressed topic in the Bible is money, and so I think issues of greed, of how we put it in its place, and so forth, I don't think they're new. The very best book on personal finance that was written over 2,000 years ago, the Synoptic Gospels, probably continue to have better advice and better counsel dealing with money than almost any other book out there. I think that when we're dealing with something that is the essence of people's way of relating to each other, see, I think money's gotten a bad reputation. It's synonymous with power and greed and wealth. But the flip side of that is that money is the primary way human beings relate to each other, and people share their very best stuff with each other over money. That people will give freely in the course of commerce in ways that doesn't happen any other way. So as we talk to people about money, look for the good side as well. It's not just about greed and fear. It's also about sharing. It's also about building wealth. And wealth isn't a dirty word. Despite what we're hearing in a lot of quarters, wealth building is the essence of how human beings create a vibrant society. Sam, you had your hand up?
Yeah. Utility maximization too. Hey, It sure is. Why not? It's the most efficient producer of wealth. So let's not, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm a staunch defender of that. Why not build wealth? What's wrong with it? It's with my hard work. I'm not asking anyone
But
else
you
for it.
can't do
I'm doing
you
it on my
can't build
own.
wealth without
So why not?
sharing. You know,
Hey,
you're here in this class, and this is how you earn your living, and you're sharing a lifetime of research, of hard work, of uh, labor, of brilliance. You're sharing that, and part of the reason you're doing that is you're getting paid to do it, and that's good.
yeah, you know, I don't have, I'm not going to, get into the issue of the sharing issue, the distribution issue. That's very loaded because it brings up all sorts of other things. We need to be able to understand the emotions lying that underlying that issue before I venture forward
Fair
anywhere.
enough.
So I'm going to beg off for this time. I'm going to sign off, Dick. It's been a wonderful class. And would you please
Thank
remember to
you.
stop recording? All right. Now, for a digital refugee, you're
Thank you.
coming along great.
All righty. Good night. So, that's my little speech. I think that it's something, part of what we're dealing with is the really good stuff of humanity, as well as some of the really bad stuff of humanity. And that part of what we're reading with the behavioral finance and behavioral economics is, those are individual issues. I don't think they're the whole deal. And I think the psychology of money is a very, very big deal. And frankly, I'm kind of finding this material wanting in that respect. That there's a lot of fancy names and words, and that's probably useful for communications purposes. But is it really getting at the essence of what the psychology of money is all about, and what happens when one person is in front of you talking about their life? All right, I gotta read this stuff. You guys make it hard for a far-sighted guy. 1,200? Seriously? Wow. I thought we were loaded. We got about 150. Chad?
Yeah, I only bring that up because, this is one of the times that as Americans living in a foreign country that we're really able to um, openly share it at the lowest level, at the most individual level with, this country. And absolutely, we gave away over 20 pounds of candy, roughly about 1,200 pieces for
Wow.
3 hours last. For whatever reason, trick-or-treating Halloween is just this really novel idea for Germans. And over the years, they've heard, yep, let's go to the American community and trick-or-treat. And they come in droves. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. But when you speak about wealth building, I mean, really,
That's great. I remember the stories about sharing chocolate with kids in Europe in World War II, and a lot of those efforts are remembered literally decades later. It's a way of anything that builds between human beings is kind of a good thing, isn't it? I'm preaching. So let's wrap it up here. What did you guys get out of this week's readings? Colin? Colin.
I think I learned. Sorry about that. I had my mute on. Yeah, had to catch up here. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things I got out of the 3 papers for class really was on the subject of annuities, as I kind of mentioned before. And they've always been a no-no, but I think in reading this material, and hey, maybe I'm subject to recency because this is what I most recently read, but it seems like it makes a lot of sense to have at least that base level where your basic needs will be taken care of and not subject to the vagaries of the market. I, for one, right now am literally 95+% invested in stocks and mutual funds. So, that's obviously very high risk, and maybe a little peace of mind would help me sleep better at night, especially given the current situation with the world economy.
And 5% down in 2 days.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster, let me tell you.
Oh, I share your approach, actually, and I'm with you. I mean, it's something to.
I did benefit on the way up quite a bit.
Well, there's some stocks that have good dividend streams, and I just have a hard time with 2% personally. I really do. And I have a hard time going annuities at a time when 2% is the prevailing risk-free rate. It's
right.
Not like annuities are opulent in their payouts right now. Maybe a little bit better, but it's a tough. I think it's ironic that we have created a circumstance where the one investment that most people are truly competent to make pays nearly nothing, and that's a bank account. Colin?
Yeah, and actually that makes a lot of sense because what you're saying about that being ironic, I've been doing some reading lately, and a lot of retirees who are in any kind of fixed income, scenario are really, really hurting now because they're paying nothing or next to nothing.
Right.
And all the encouragement is going into, do high risk because of the, kind of cheap, easy money.
Well, this is where I think it's important for people that work with the individuals to start speaking out. And, we're starting, I coined the word phonology, F-I-N-O-L-O-G-Y, to mean the study of money at the level of the individual. If you go to my website, worthliving.com, I have a definition of phonology pretty much at the top of the page. But we don't even have words to describe the relationships between individuals and money. And if you think about what it means to not even have the words, that's a pretty extraordinary segregation of money from all else in our lives. It seems, you can't have a conspiracy of language, but it's something that we've gotten to 2011 without the words to describe our individual relationships with money. I can speak on that for hours, actually. Tom? Tom?
Well, a couple things, talk. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Couple things. I think interest rates are being kept artificially low to, one, recapitalize banks and to try and drive money into investment. And I forgot the other thing I was going to say.
Well, and I understand that, and I even may agree with pieces of that policy. I continue to suggest that that's really to the strong disadvantage of the guy that's saved and not gotten fancy. That any other investment besides a bank account requires some skill, requires some risk.
Well, I agree, and I believe someday we'll pay for this, probably in higher inflation.
Well, and we'll also pay for it in terms of needing the government to keep a certain level of income coming, that there will be, Social Security will be around. I can't conceive that I can conceive that it'll be worthless, but I can't conceive it won't be around.
Agree.
So you guys have a chance to wrap up your thoughts about this material, and then we'll postpone till next week. I enjoyed this night's class, but
Sounds good.
let's do a little wrap up. What did you get out of tonight? I'm going to start from the bottom of my list, Tom.
Well, going back to what I said earlier, that I really believe in the readings too. I really believe that money has to be managed with a hard plan, with a written plan and thought out. Taking out the heuristics and the overconfidence and things like that. We have to really use realistic numbers.
Well, isn't a
Like
plan a
the
way of squeezing out the
pension
heuristics?
plans and everybody else did for so many years. So it really has to. We really have to have a firm grasp on it. We really need to portray that to our clients.
Excellent. Twee?
Well, I think it's really interesting class, and after talking to you and Dr. B and all my classmates, I learned a lot about. We really do have to do whatever is the best of our clients, and I really believe in financial plan. Without it, like we walk in the dark. We don't know what is.
Go ahead. Colin? Colin?
Yeah, I think that opened my eyes, as I mentioned, to the annuities, but also opened my eyes to the fact that sometimes somebody else who is actually in the field can look at some of this material and go, how does this apply to me? Which I was glad about, particularly with this latest chapter 6. Some of the, I've got to tell you, I've got to go back and reread the miscalibration because I can't see anywhere where that applies, honestly, but
Well, I'm not gonna,
I'm sure I'm missing it somehow.
well, you're not going to get any help from me, I'll tell you that. I had the same response.
Thanks.
All right, Chad?
Yeah, I really enjoyed tonight's class as well. I don't know, I guess I've got to go back. For me, I keep hitting on this, the education aspect of it. Somehow, to me, we've got to reach a broader audience sooner than at age 45 or 50, because by then, the money patterns are far too ingrained. I don't think that we can change them at that age, at that point. So, I keep looking at how can we educate people at a younger age and establish the proper money pattern.
Well, I'm going to suggest that it's a relationship issue. That issue of our relationship with money is at ground zero for what it is you're suggesting. That money is tough stuff. It's weird stuff. Don't forget what Jacob Needleman said. Everybody's weird about money. And on that note, I'll see you guys next week. Thank you.